I want to talk to you a little bit now about another data type, uh, similar to list, though not as powerful or as dangerous. They're called a tuple, Tuple. We've actually seen them before, though you might not have recognized that. I'll show you that in just a moment. Tuples like lists allow you to store multiple objects in a sequence, and they can be objects of different types. The difference between a tuple and a list, however, is that a tuple is immutable. Once you create it, it cannot be changed. Now, of course, the question will arise about which you should choose in a particular instance, and it all depends upon the application. If there's some possibility that this sequence that you've created you'll need to take away or add to it, then it should without a doubt be a list. Otherwise, you might consider a tuple. If there's no reason ever to make a change to it, then why allow for that possibility? And then you can make a tuple. Well, how do you make a tuple? Ultimately, the way you make a tuple is with a comma. So here's a tuple, 1 comma 2 comma 3. So the formation operator for the tuple in this context is the comma. And typically, when you have a tuple reported back to you, it's enclosed inside of parentheses. And you can use those parentheses to create a tuple if you like. But what you must understand is that actually it wasn't the parentheses that created the tuple, it was the comma that created the tuple. You can even create a tuple that contains only one element, and that would simply be 5 comma. So there it is reported back with parentheses. Now, what can you do with tuples? Well, I'll make the tuple 1 comma, there we go, 2 comma 3. So there's the tuple T. You can extract elements from it. You can use indices just like we saw before. So there it is, the element at index 0. You certainly cannot change it, but you can get the elements back out again. And then here's something really cool that you can do. Let's say that you wish to have separate names for the elements in a tuple. You could do something like this. Ooh, and Python was perfectly happy. So what happened here? Well, the tuple was the elements 1, 2, 3. So A got assigned the value 1, T got assigned the value 2. Excuse me, A got assigned the value 1, B got assigned the value 2, and C got assigned the value 3. So you can assign multiple values, or you can assign a tuple to multiple variables, and the variables will get successive elements out of that tuple. And you can see that here. So there's A, and there's B, and there's C. Now, when have we seen tuples before? Well, we saw them when we created functions that return multiple values. So let's see. What would be a function that would maybe return multiple values? Well, just to build on work that we've done previously, let's write a single function that returns the number of odds and the number of evens in a certain list. Okay, so there'll be a count of evens, there'll be a count of odds, and that will be 0 and 0. And let's just pause right there. Look at the right side of the assignment token. That is the 0 comma 0. Well, you know what that is. That's a tuple. So Python created the tuple, and then count evens, count odds. Uh, the values that they were given were first the initial element in that tuple, and then the second element in that tuple. So the end result is that they're both 0. And then for num and L, that is, we need to iterate through L. So if the remainder when that num is divided by 2 is 0, then count evens will be incremented by 1. Otherwise, let's assume that we got just integers here. So the only other possibility is that we get a remainder of 1, um, which means we don't even have to test for that. That's just inevitably true if the remainder is not 0. So the count odds will be incremented by 1. And then, oops, there we go. And then what we can do, and there have actually been examples of this in work that you've done before, we can return both of them. And then let's think about what this is. You see the comma in between them and nothing else, right? So what does that comma do in a case like this? It creates a tuple. So the object that gets returned from this particular function is a tuple. And let's run it and hope that there are no syntax errors. So I will do num evens, num odds, and evens, and I will call this on a list that contains how about a 1 and a 12 and a 56 and a 99 and a 101. And also let's add 102. Okay. And then let's see, what should that be? The number of evens should be 3, and the number of odds should be 3 as well. And oops, I didn't spell something right. So count evens, count odds. Oops. So let me look. Local variable count events. Where was that? Oh, I see. I should look at the line number. I tell you that you should read your error messages, and I should as well. So count evens and count odds. So that should now be correct. And I tell you what, I'll actually go and copy that so I can use it later on. And I'll run my code again, and I will paste in that line from the console, and then 3 and 3. And notice how this is reported back to me. It doesn't simply print 3 and then another 3, but it puts them in parentheses, which is the way that Python communicates to you that you have created a tuple. So know that you can create tuples as well. Okay, if you need a sequence of objects, and if it turns out for the particular task that you wish to carry out that there's no need ever to change that sequence once it's been created, then, well, in an instance like that, I just always create a tuple.